Hi everyone and welcome to English Digest. I'm Pat.
And I'm Kat.
And it's our News Digest article for this month, and there really has only been one thing in the news for most of this year. Of course, we are talking about the COVID-19 crisis, which is affecting countries all over the world. This article is going to kind of talk about one particular area of that. There are so many different news stories that have come out of this in different places, in different countries, different people reacting to it. We're recording this at the start of May, so Taiwan is doing okay at the moment.
I think we haven't had any local cases for almost a month on this day, which is really good. And hopefully we continue on that path.
Fingers crossed, yes. So, we're just going to be taking one particular issue. Other articles in our magazine have looked at how the illness works, how it spreads, what different countries are doing. We're going to look at the issue of being a patient during this time. I've actually been to the hospital because I have to go for regular checkups during this time. And I mean, the hospitals are pretty, they really do check everything. They've got this temperature screenings, you've got the sprays, they've got the checking the card. It's definitely a very different experience, as is getting your haircut, as I found out recently.
Really?
Yeah.
Like how so?
They order it differently. Like before you would go in, sit down, get the ticket. Now they're like, you stay outside until someone's free. They will check you.
You're talking about like the 100 NT barbershops
the
kind
300
of
NT, yeah. I go slightly fancier. Not that I really need to. But yeah, they had a different process to make sure that you didn't even buy a ticket until you'd been temperature checked. And no one sat down inside it.
That's fair.
You could take your mask off for the haircut, but that was it, basically. So yeah, different sort of experience.
Yeah, I think in the salon that I go to, they're doing like the temperature check and the hand spray and just like every other business has been doing.
Do they distance a bit? Like maybe there's an empty seat between two people at the same time?
Yeah, but I mean, they have a larger space in general anyway, so there's already 1.5 meters between people.
I went to a food court recently. I noticed they had all those plastic screens up to kind of give everybody their little space.
Yeah,
which was interesting.
I even saw that there were some that had put up like cool little like ears and noses, so you could see the person in front of you would look like they had like a photo filter on.
That's fun.
It was fun.
Yeah. Okay, so let us read through this article and look at patient privacy during a pandemic and see what that is all about.
In light of the COVID-19 pandemic, countries have altered numerous rules that govern our daily lives. Nowhere have things changed more radically than in the realm of healthcare, where medical experts have had to make crucial decisions affecting public health and safety. One such dilemma is that of patient privacy. In normal circumstances, patients are guaranteed confidentiality, but now this practice may actually be hindering pandemic response efforts. Lack of transparency around who has COVID-19 and where they've been can cause heightened panic and paranoia. Many people want to know comprehensive information in order to make informed decisions or understand if they've been in possible contact with an infected person. On the other hand, less patient privacy can lead to COVID-19 patients being condemned for unintentionally creating circumstances out of their control. Detailed location information can also affect business in places patients are known to have visited. Governments have taken various approaches to this issue. In South Korea, for example, the government has been publicizing the ages and recent locations of people with confirmed cases. While this may be a component of the country's relatively successful control of the virus, it has also led to harassment and fueled rumors about patients' private lives. The U.S., meanwhile, took a different approach. Healthcare providers there have continued to abide by the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, which legally prevents disclosure of patients' personal data. Only their general locations and ages are released publicly. Yet some say it is time that the U.S. relaxed these restrictions, as they could leave open vectors for virus transmission and increase public anxiety. These examples show how balancing public safety and the right to privacy is yet one more challenge we face in these extraordinary times.
All right, then. So we'll start with one of the words in our title, patient privacy in a pandemic.
Pandemic.
Pandemic is a word that you are going to probably have heard a lot over these last few months because a pandemic is a disease which is affecting countries all around the world.
Right, as opposed to an epidemic.
Yeah, which is one area where it's affecting a lot of people, is that right?
Yeah, like SARS was an epidemic and COVID is a pandemic.
Right.
You could put it like that.
Okay, that's a good way. Yeah, Ebola was an epidemic because it was kind of concentrated in one area.
In Africa and partly in the US, but nowhere else.
Yes, whereas a pandemic, this is all over the world. Okay, so what should the public know?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, and I think it's a question that we are trying to answer, but it's kind of up to the individual country and the individual person as to what your opinion is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so the article starts out by saying, in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, countries have altered numerous rules that govern our daily lives. So when we say in light of something, that means kind of with consideration to, or when you are looking at this situation and these circumstances, you have to consider it when you're thinking about this fact. And the fact would be that countries have altered their rules.
Exactly. If you alter something, you change something. It could be a small change, it could be a very big change, but something is different to how it was before. So this could be anything from the lockdowns we've seen in many countries where people are staying at home and can only go out for like once a day for exercise or essential shopping trips, to things like making masks compulsory on the Taipei MRT and other things like that. So a lot of rules, a lot of things have had to change in light of or because of this COVID-19 virus and how it's affecting things.
Right.
And in one area in particular, an obvious area really, there have been a lot of alterations.
Yeah, so nowhere have things changed more radically. That's an inversion there. So things have changed more radically nowhere other than in the realm of healthcare. So, yeah, obviously, healthcare is the thing that is at the most consideration in this pandemic because that's what it's involved in. So they changed radically. And to say that something has changed radically or is a radical thing means that it's very, very different than what is normal, or it's very dramatic. Like a radical change would be a dramatic and very big change.
Exactly. And we're talking about this happening in the realm of healthcare. Realm is a word that kind of means an area. It could mean a kingdom, and it's kind of got that sort of old word to it, but it can also mean a sort of a connected industry or a set of very closely connected industries. So healthcare, of course, involves everything from hospitals to ambulance services to even simple stuff like going to see the doctor or even going into a pharmacy.
Exactly.
Those are all part of the realm of healthcare. It's all part of this connected big area.
Yeah.
And medical, sorry.
So you could even say the healthcare industry.
We could indeed. Yep, and medical experts have had to make crucial decisions affecting public health and safety. So, they've had to make big calls. What do we do? This is our plan. This is how we're going to change.
Yeah.
Now, one such dilemma is that of patient privacy. So a dilemma, or dilemma, you can kind of say it both ways, is a big problem with no easy solution. It's a very difficult choice. Should we do this, or maybe you've got 3 possible things you can choose. Or more, but the idea is it's a problem with no easy solution. Either way, you're probably going to sacrifice something. Someone or something will have to suffer in order to pick one way. So it's very difficult to find the right choice. There's no easy, obvious, this is what we should do.
Yeah, and even though it has a very serious definition, dilemma is actually like sort of a fun word to say, along with some of its synonyms like conundrum.
Ooh.
Yeah. Or something like that. But anyway, you're like stuck between a rock and a hard place, which is an idiom for a problem that you can't solve easily. Yeah, so in normal circumstances, when we're not in the middle of a pandemic, patients are guaranteed confidentiality. But now this practice may actually be hindering pandemic response efforts. So what do we mean about confidentiality? When something is confidential, that's the adjective, it means that it is secret, it's private, you are guaranteed that nobody's going to learn about it except for the person it involves directly. So if you, for example, have like a serious medical emergency, your doctor will not tell anybody except you and anybody that you give them permission to tell. Yeah.
Which would include other doctors in the same hospital.
Right.
That kind of stuff. But they're not going to share it with other people. They're not going to tell the press. So if you've got COVID-19 and the doctor finds out, what do? Do they go, I need to tell people so that your family knows, but confidentiality and doctor-patient confidentiality is one. I think people and lawyers also have confidentiality.
And therapists. And,
so they're kind of bound by the rules of their job not to share the information.
Yeah.
And not sharing it is why we're saying this may be hindering pandemic response efforts. If you hinder something, you kind of make it a lot more difficult. You make it tricky. You might even stop it and prevent it from happening.
Yeah.
So the idea here is, well, if this person's got COVID-19, but I'm not allowed to tell anyone, how do we as a country sort of figure out who this person may have been in contact with and shared it with? How do we trace the other people and make sure that it hasn't got any further?
Right.
If we can't talk about it.
Exactly.
So that's the dilemma we're facing.
Yep, exactly. And I mean, people have different responses to it. So as we see in the beginning of our next paragraph, lack of transparency around who has COVID-19 and where they've been can cause heightened panic and paranoia. So when we say transparency here, you might have heard this word transparent when you're talking about something you can see through. Like, for example, a glass. A glass is transparent. But if we're talking about a figurative idea of transparency, that means that everything, all the information that is out there is being made available. It's being made clear. There's nothing that anybody's trying to hide. That would be transparency.
We often talk about government transparency, like voters should know what the government is doing, what laws they're passing, what's everything in it, how the decisions have been made.
Yeah, and people's tax records and what they voted for and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, so if there's a lack of transparency, it means there isn't enough information. We don't know who has COVID and where have they been, and this causes panic and paranoia. Paranoia is this sense that an individual has that everybody is out to get them or a certain situation is very dangerous.
Yeah.
And the best way to describe it is in the early stages of COVID-19, people were looking around and go, oh, that guy coughed. Does he have it?
Yeah.
That guy's not wearing a mask. Does he have it? That old person I passed on the street. Yeah, and that is paranoia. Instead of basing your judgments on a sensible idea, someone who is paranoid, which is the adjective, or paranoia is the noun, if you're suffering from that, you're making kind of irrational judgments and thinking that everything is way more dangerous and threatening than it really is.
Yeah, it's decision-making based on fear. Yeah. So anyway, I mean, what do people want to know if they are feeling paranoid?
Well, many people want to know comprehensive information in order to make informed decisions or understand if they've been in possible contact with an infected person. So comprehensive means fully detailed. It includes everything. It's very thorough. So comprehensive information, basically, they want to know who's got it, where these people live, where they've been, where they've traveled to, what they've eaten, and so on. All that kind of stuff. What if they work with food? What if they work with children? All this kind of information. And they want that to make informed decisions, which is a decision you make when you've got a lot of data and detail to help you make it. For example, if you remember when we heard about the sailors from the ship who some of them had COVID, everybody wanted to know where did they go so I can make an informed decision. I won't go there.
Yeah. Or where did they go? Was I there at the same time? Should I stay home?
Yeah, should I go into self-isolation? Should I see if I can get a test?
Yeah.
All of those kinds of things. So that's what they mean about being in informed decisions and deciding what to do, and they need the full information to do that.
Yeah, of course. On the other hand, of course, there's always a counter-argument. On the other hand, less patient privacy can lead to COVID-19 patients being condemned for unintentionally creating circumstances out of their control. So condemn. When you condemn somebody, it means you blame them, basically. So you say, like, you did something wrong, you did something bad, and you should be, like, maybe put in jail or, like, cast out of society. People should be mad at you. I condemn you.
Yes, you are a terrible person.
Yep.
That kind of thing. Even though these people who are getting condemned, they didn't know because you could be carrying.
How could you know?
Yeah, you could be carrying this disease before you even know it. You could be carrying it without symptoms.
Yeah.
So if COVID-19 patients, they may have done these things, but it's creating circumstances unintentionally, so they didn't know. It's out of their control because it's not like they had a choice about getting infected by it.
Yeah, exactly.
So people who are getting these diseases, who have just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, are being blamed.
Yeah.
And that's what we don't want. And it's kind of, you'll see it in the news, it branching out to people from, whatever countries or whatever ethnicity being blamed simply for that.
Yeah, exactly.
So
there's
it gets
sort of like
really out of hand.
I feel like there's sort of racism on both sides. There's it's worse for example, Asian Americans who they've been harassed a lot because people think they're Chinese. They're from China, and they brought the virus over there. And then there's, the whole thing of, foreigners who are non-Asian in Asian countries also being counterblamed.
Being blamed as well, because a lot of cases came in from overseas or whatever.
Yeah.
So, detailed location information can also affect businesses in places patients are known to have visited. So, you think, someone with COVID went to this restaurant, I'm never going there again.
Yeah.
Or, I think someone with COVID might have gone to this restaurant, I'm never going again.
Yeah,
and
even
so this
though actually
restaurant gets shut down.
Yeah, even though actually, they would have obviously cleaned it after they learned about that.
There is both arguments there. If I knew someone with COVID-19 had been to a restaurant, I would choose to go somewhere else.
That's true, yeah. I might, yeah.
You got to be sensible.
Yeah. Absolutely. You gotta think about your own health. But you gotta think smart. You can't be paranoid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a short break right now. We'll come back in a moment to see how different governments have approached this whole issue of privacy. Hi everyone, welcome back to our News Digest article. We've been talking about patient privacy during a pandemic, and we're going to look now and see that governments have taken various approaches to this issue.
And I noticed that you said both privacy and privacy, Pat.
Yes, I'm not consistent. Both pronunciations are okay. Privacy, I tend to say privacy if I'm thinking
I think that's more
UK.
of a British pronunciation.
Yes, yeah.
And I say privacy.
Yeah, we'd say privacy probably.
Yeah, like vitamin.
Yeah, I reckon the US is right on that one, actually.
Really?
And that's something you'll never, ever hear me say anytime.
Wow.
And it's recorded.
Oh,
anyway.
My goodness.
Back to the article.
All right, so what are the various approaches different governments have taken? Our first example is one of our neighbors. In South Korea, for example, the government has been publicizing the ages and recent locations of people with confirmed cases. And yeah, if you read the Korean news, you can easily find out who has been where, how old they are, and even when they were at a specific place, like a specific hotel, a specific club, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And to publicize this information means to make it public. You put it on a public website, maybe the Center for Disease Control kind of website, or you make it a news announcement that goes out as a broadcast or in newspapers. You basically make the information very easy to find for everyone.
Yep. And so while this may be a component or a part of the country's relatively successful control of the virus, which, South Korea has done a pretty good job controlling the virus, it has also led to harassment and fueled rumors about patients' private lives. So harassment here... Harassment is a noun that is kind of like a really bad thing. So if you are harassed, that's the verb, that means that somebody kind of goes after you, tries to make you uncomfortable. They might yell at you, they might, do something sexual, or something verbal, or, just something that makes you feel really uncomfortable and your space and your body or, whatever has been violated.
Yeah.
That's harassment. And so, that's what's happening in Korea. There's people like leaving comments online saying there was even one case where I think a man and a woman who were not married were caught in the same place, both with COVID, and everybody said, oh, they're having an affair.
Right. So that's the fueled rumors about patients' private lives.
Yep.
Yeah, and harassment and these days often does take place online. So if people are leaving mean comments or they're trying to find out your address and make sure everyone knows it, then that is also a kind of harassment.
Yeah, and that in particular is called doxing.
Yeah. So that's what South Korea has done. They've been very public about who's got COVID and where they've been, and that has maybe helped them control the problem a bit. But on the other hand, it's led to a lot of people, trying to find out people's personal details, attacking each other, spying on each other, that kind of stuff. So now let's take a look at a country that took a different approach. It says the US, meanwhile, took a different approach. Healthcare providers there have continued to abide by the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA? HIPAA. Which legally prevents disclosure of patients' personal data. So if you abide by something, you follow it. It's often rules. We say you abide by rules, you abide by a dress code, which means you follow all the rules in the code. If you're abiding by an act, that means you're following all the laws in the act. You're doing what everything says you do. If it says you must do these 5 things, you do all of these 5 things.
Yep.
If you abide by your word, you make a promise and then you keep that promise. So kind of anything like that is what abiding by means.
Yeah, it's kind of a word or a phrase associated with rules, abiding by rules, or a rule-abiding citizen, law-abiding citizen.
Okay.
Yeah, but HIPAA legally prevents disclosure of patients' personal data. And a disclosure, or to disclose something, means to tell somebody else about it. Like basically, if you have a secret and then you disclose it, that would mean that people now know about that secret. Basically, disclosure talks about something that previously was not known, or maybe that people wanted to know, and then it becomes, known information. That would be something disclosed. And actually, HIPAA, I think in normal circumstances, is one of the strong points of American healthcare, because patients' parents don't even get to find out about their stuff if they don't want them to.
If they don't want them to.
Yes.
This act, I did a bit of research. This act does other things, like if people move jobs, they keep their or move their where they live, or if they lose their jobs, they can get health insurance coverage still.
Yeah.
Part of that, that's part of the rule.
Yeah, that's good.
But it also does protect people from having their information known, not just by relatives, but also by governments.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
your personal information is not available to the government, who might use it for whatever ends. So we see that in the article, only so that's the COVID patients, general locations and ages are released publicly. So,
like
maybe
the town that they're in.
Right, there's one person in this town, there's one person over 70 in this town. So, I mean, depending on the size of the town, that might be enough, but generally people are allowed to keep that private.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yet some say it is time that the U.S. relax these restrictions, and they have a point, as they could leave open vectors for virus transmission and increase public anxiety. And I see their point, because if you're only talking about, this person in this town has it, well, where in town? Because that could be really, really a big area, and people don't know if they've been in contact with that person.
Yeah, and if you just said a person over 50, then, old people are maybe going to get ignored or not helped, because everyone's going to be like, well, what if that's the person? So that's what we mean by kind of increasing public anxiety. But we've got a couple of medical words to look at here too.
Yeah, vector. Vector is one of them. So vector has a few different meanings, but in this case, it's kind of referring to a straight line, or like a pathway. So it's a pathway for the way that a virus can be spread. So when you say a vector for transmission, that means like it's a potential way that the virus could be spread, whether it's through water, through the air, through shared body fluids like blood, something like that.
Yeah. The word is often used as well for some kind of living thing that can transmit a disease. Like we would say mosquitoes are vectors.
Vector for
malaria, dengue fever, those
Zika,
kinds of things. So, yeah. Another one we've got here is transmission. Transmission is basically the movement of one thing to another place, or in this case, person, as it's a virus. We say the verb form is transmit, so the virus can be transmitted through the air, through water droplets. Other viruses are transmitted through contact of body fluids and things like that. So virus transmission is basically how a virus gets from one person into another person and infects them as well.
Yep.
So if people don't know about this, then maybe they will get infected because they didn't know they needed to be careful in a certain area or around, a certain person, or they won't know if they've been in contact with that person, so they might have it and go and infect a bunch of other people.
Yeah.
That's why the information is kind of important. That's why people are saying we need to know who's got it, because if we know who's got it, we know who they've been in contact with, and we can stop them, and we can see who they've been in contact with, and generally control the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, at the end of our article, what is our answer? What's the best way?
Nobody knows!
Yeah, because it's a dilemma.
It is.
Yeah. So, these examples show how balancing public safety and the right to privacy is yet one more challenge we face in these extraordinary times. It's a challenge, and these are extraordinary times, and it's not something that we're really going to solve.
No, I think the governments who are able to trace who the people have been in contact with have probably done better in terms of finding out, okay, where have they been? Let's talk to their family members. Let's talk to other people. If they've been on a flight, we can contact all the people on that flight.
Yeah.
And Taiwan has done a lot of that. And
that
I
is
think
true.
Taiwan has helped to do it.
Yeah,
but Taiwan has not released names and addresses.
Yeah. So, there's, where people have been, and if they've, visited specific locations in the city or in the country while they've been knowingly infected, then you'll know about it. But, I think that Taiwan's system has made it so that people know where other patients have been, but they don't get to harass them.
Right, yeah, it's difficult to find the information. I think they're doing quite a job of protecting that.
So maybe that's the answer.
That maybe is be like Taiwan.
Yeah.
Okay. So that brings us to the end of our News Digest article. Have a think about what, put yourself in the shoes of a person with the disease. If you'd accidentally caught it, would you want your information to be publicly available?
Yeah.
What would it do to you versus how would it benefit the country? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you've got to think of it from the people who have the disease as well as those who don't. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for listening, everybody. For English Digest, I'm Pat.
And I'm Kat.
And we'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
See you next time.
Stay safe, stay healthy.
Yep.